Took me a long time to figure that out, but I can say that pretty much safely now. You need to know what your trial story is. You need to know it before you get there. You need to know what is the story of this case that I need this jury to adopt. There may be a trial story on damages and a separate trial story on the causation or defect or whatever. But you've got a trial story. And what the trial story is in terms of the jury is when they go home at the end of the first witness, they go home that night and the spouse says, what's this case about? They say, well, this is a case about. Whatever they say after that is their trial story. This is a case about this poor man who lost his wife because the doctor didn't pay attention. Or this is a case about another one of those frivolous medical malpractice cases where they're trying to make money, a man's trying to make money off the death of his wife. I mean, those are two completely different, obviously completely different trial stories, but whatever they say to finish that sentence is their own little trial story that they're formulating. Now that trial story then becomes important because when they then hear evidence, they will seek evidence that supports their trial story. So there are a lot of things that we put on in terms of oral testimony and in terms of visual testimony, demonstrative evidence that is subject to interpretation. We know it can be interpreted either way. The importance of the trial story is, in the persuasive process, is they will then interpret. They want to be right. They always want to be right. They think they've got this case figured out. So then they will look for evidence and interpret evidence in such a way that it supports their trial story. Now, this is an advantage to us because we get to go first. Because we get the opportunity to handle their trial story and to help them formulate their trial story early in the game. So once you get to the voir dire examination, the first witness, and your opening statement of the first witness, then what you're thinking should be is, okay, at this point, what do I do to support everything I've just said with, and this is the important part about the unconscious versus the conscious mind appeal. How can I support everything that they've just formulated by hard evidence? You put your hard evidence on first. So I'll get back to that in a minute. Let me tell you about some folks, like I said, who have really helped us with this quite a bit, who've done a lot of work in terms of the decision-making in the courtroom. Let's switch over to see. I want to talk to you about a couple of three people who are very interesting. Clotaire RAPAILLE has a book called The Culture Code. In the Culture Code, what he has done, this man's amazing. He's a Frenchman who came to America, and it's very interesting, a common thing that these psychologists and sociologists do. A lot of their work is founded in focus groups. It shows you the extreme importance of focus groups. We do focus groups in every single case. I did a focus group last week in preparation for a deposition in January. We're going to do at least 2 more focus groups just to prepare for that deposition, because it's the deposition, it's a mass tort case, and it's the deposition of the most important single witness in the entire case. And so we will do at least 3 focus groups just to get ready for that deposition I'm going to take January 11th. But these people have used focus groups to delve into how Americans think, how jurors think. So when you think about the Culture Code, you think about, there's the Culture Code, there's the Reptile, which we'll talk about, there's Rules of the Road, which I won't bother to talk about because you're going to have the master here shortly, and there's Neuro-Linguistic Programming. All these things have been helpful to us in understanding psychology. But all these folks do the same thing. They delve into the brain and into the parts of the brain and how we persuade and how the decision-making process takes place in the brain. Now, you have the cerebral hemispheres and the cortex. You have the limbic, which is the hippocampus, as you can see. And then you have the reptile. Now, the brainstem and the cerebellum. In the culture code, he identifies the brain as the reptile being lust, fear, and aggression, and the limbic as being emotions, and the cortex being higher reason. Now, you would hope that juror decision-making, voter decision-making, would be based upon the cortex, higher decision-making. If you want to see, I mean, you only have to look back at the elections since, I don't know, pick the year 2000. And you see that obviously decision-making is not based on the higher reason. It's based on the reptile. And everybody agrees with this, that the reptile always prevails. As between higher reason, the reptile always prevails. And the reptile, again, and you're seeing it right now, fear. It's all about fear. You see the re-election, this was the absolute format that was used for the re-election of George W. Bush in 2004. How do you re-elect someone who's just had one of the worst four-year administrations in the history of the country, and yet they get re-elected? You remember what the theme was? You can't change commanders-in-chief in the middle of a war. They're coming for us. It was all fear, fear, fear. Remember all the color codes that we had, the levels of security? They were all, it's red today, be scared as you drive to work, whatever. That was all tapping into the reptile. It was all tapping into fear. And we know this, that the reptile always prevails, which is why that the reptile, as being taught now by our friends, has a very valid basis in persuasion in the brain. But let me tell you what Clotaire RAPAILLE did. He came into America and he wanted to decide what is the culture of America, what is the code for American culture. So if you take any one given thing in America, how can I take the whole area of like medicine? How can I take the area of medicine and what is one word that I can use to identify what the Americans think of the medical system? So he takes the medical malpractice, for example. So the doctor, the code for doctor and nurse and hospital. And he does focus group after focus group after focus group. And this is one I'll come back to in a moment. Well, let's just do this. One of the things that he figures out, and this can be helpful to us, for health and wellness, Americans, the one word that Americans use to identify with health and wellness is movement. So if you've lost your mobility, if you've lost your movement, then you've got severe damage to your health. And this is how Americans think. We think of movement as being healthy, the ability to get around. And so what you want to prove as you're proving up the damages in a case, if you want to tap into this, you prove all the things that your plaintiff cannot do now that they could do before as a result of the loss of movement, their inability to get around, their inability to do things they could do before. But let's look at what did he find with respect to doctors. Not surprisingly, he found that the doctor, the one word that describes in American culture, the one word that describes a doctor is hero. But you think that's something, you think hero's hard to deal with, try suing the nurse. The one word in the culture code of our culture that identifies nurse is mother. Sued your mother lately? But you got to love this one. You got to love this one. The one word that, the phrase that identifies hospital is processing plant. It's more like a meat packing plant. But if you, they move you through if you've been in the hospital lately, it is. You're moved in here, you moved here, you move through here, you move through a system. But that's not a favorable impression. So if you're thinking now, so how do you sue a doctor if they're regarded as a hero? How do you sue a nurse if they're thought of as mother? Well, you have to sue on the basis that they are off code. The code, the culture code, the attitude of Americans about doctors is that they are heroes. So you set the standard, it's okay, set the standard that this is what this is what the hero doctor would do. This doctor, however, is off code. He's not, it doesn't mean that every doctor is viewed as a hero. It means that this doctor, in this particular case, is off code. But then when you're suing the processing plant, it gets a lot easier. You may recall, most of you that know me know that I had the case of the young lady, Jessica Santillan, who was, she got the wrong heart and lung transplant. They gave her the wrong blood type in the heart and lung transplant at Duke Medical Center. So I had to try that case. I was getting ready to try that case. And what I saw was immediately this doctor really was a hero. The doctor is superior. The doctor actually loved this child. He'd had a relationship with her for over a year while they're waiting to try to get her a heart. This doctor felt real remorse. And they put him forward as a hero. And focus groups loved him. And it had a lot of publicity nationally. And so what I did in this case is they're thinking I'm coming after him. So what I did was I sued instead. I didn't sue him. When I drafted my complaint, I sued. I found 18 different instances where any one person could have stopped and said, wait a minute, these blood types are different. This doesn't work. 18 instances. So what I did was I sued the hospital directly, and I sued the head of the medical center personally because he was in charge of all the protocols, he was in charge of all training, he was in charge of everything. And he had already decided he was going to take another position, and he was going to be leaving. But the most important thing was they were self-insured to a very large extent, and he was the decision maker on paying money for a settlement of the case. So I named him personally. So I sued the hospital and him personally. And the defense lawyer called me, and he said, I saw your complaint, and I sent it on over to the general counsel, and they said, this guy's stupid. He didn't even sue the doctor. And he said, I told him maybe they might want to rethink that, because this had been wide publicity, and sure enough, this guy had 4 months left on his term as the head, and he decided he wanted to dispose of that, clean up his own mess before he left the hospital, and so they settled the case. But they were all set to march forward with the hero. So you can use this type of thing. Now, I suggest that it's an easy read. I suggest that you might want to take a look at the culture code. There are lots of other things in there that can help us.